If you are anything like at all like I am, or a little bit at least, you meet any journey with a certain degree of apprehension. Well, we should, in a way, because we do not control all the circumstances in it. And we cannot foresee if there are going to be problems, and if there are, how are we going to meet them? Of course, we don't look at every detail, and we don't expect to know every detail, otherwise we would never go beyond the doors of our homes. But we acknowledge that the risks are there. The truth is that by comparison, though, fatal events connected to a journey are few. Now, I don't want to be gloomy this morning, but according to the National Records of Scotland, the website that is, these are some of the figures, and I've taken just 2018. Now, there are quite a number of deaths that took place apart from illnesses of one kind or another. Something like 4,778, but only 178 of them as a result of what they call transport accidents. Now, maybe we should also include poisonings, that there were actually 1,146 in case you go to eat someplace while you're in the journey and food wasn't too great. But the fact is that this kind of events are minor, they're very few in comparison. But of course, if before starting a journey, you would be told, you will get 3 punctures on this journey, by the way, all at the same time, and while you are parked by the side of the road, waiting outside the car as you should, an insect to which you are highly allergic will bite you and you'll die. You'd probably think, well, today may not be the best day for this journey. Maybe I can postpone it, or maybe I should take another road. Something like this, the disciples have been told. Their journey was going to be a very complicated one. Even the journey of the hours ahead of them on that occasion. They've been told that things like verse 21 in chapter 13, that being amongst the disciples is no guarantee of an individual's real commitment. One of you will betray me. They've been told that being a disciple is no guarantee of avoiding failure. You will deny me 3 times, to Peter, verse 38. Being a disciple is not a guarantee either of remaining all the time by Jesus' side, verse 33. Where I am going, you cannot come. There were going to be circumstances there that told the disciples, I'm going to be removed from you. And yet being a disciple implies a demand that they will realize is beyond their power to fulfill. A new commandment, verse 34, I give to you that you love one another. Just as I've loved you, you also are to love one another. And the love of Christ, we know that has been shown in a sense by the Lord washing the disciples' feet, but is going to be shown even in a clearer and more demanding way by the Lord going to the cross for them. And so in the words of William Hendrickson in his commentary to John's Gospel, and I quote, the hearts of the disciples were filled with a medley of emotions. They were sad because of the gloomy prospect of Christ's departure, ashamed because their own demonstrated selfishness and pride, perplexed because of the prediction that one of their own number would betray the Master, that another would deny him, and that all would be ensnared because of him. And finally, they were wavering in their faith, probably thinking, how can one who is about to be betrayed be the Messiah? Now, these are very challenging words that they have heard from Jesus. But now, of course, from chapter 14 onwards, chapters that John puts, words that John puts all together as if a long discourse, and we should take it like this. He gives to them words for the journey. And these are words for the journey that come from that of whom we thought about last Lord's Day. Words for the journey that come from the divine companion. The one that gives them understanding, the one that gives them direction. These are words that come to them, that they may walk the journey with assurance. Now, these are not words that were just for them, of course, because these things were not written for Peter and John and Andrew, and so they lived them, but they are written for us. And these are also for us words for our journey that come from our divine companion, from the Lord Jesus Christ. And there are words first that give us courage. There are words then that affirm our knowledge. And there are words that confirm our duty. Let us look at these things in the first part of chapter 14 of this Gospel according to John. First of all, the words that give us courage. Verses 1 to 3 and also the beginning of verse 6. Now we look in a way at the reasons that were given to them as the basis to stop being troubled. The reasons for them being troubled, we've read about them, and we could have read further back in the Gospel, and we could have compared with the other Gospels, and we would realize that the description of why they should be troubled, or why is it that they were troubled, is given there. But now come words to them, words to us, and words that come with the authority of the one who is the ruler of the universe, as they have experienced. They come to us not as an advice. They come to us not as a good option. They come to us as a command. Stop being troubled. Do not fear. Now the question we may ask is, did Jesus really understand? Now this is not a question from the perspective of the complete knowledge that Jesus had. But did Jesus really understand from the perspective of experience? And the answer is, of course he did. Of course he did, fully well. Now we've read even at verse 21 of chapter 13, Jesus was troubled in spirit. He knew. He was no stranger to that very same emotion that was taking the disciples' hearts and minds at that very moment. Now, the content of the words that Jesus used is very clear. Stop being shaken inside. Stop being disturbed, unsettled, thrown into confusion. And Jesus knew what this was. Jesus knew what it was to have a troubled heart. When he spoke these words, he did not speak from the distance. He knew the experience of being troubled. He knew it before, and he knew that this being troubled would go in crescendo, would grow. We read things like what I've read in chapter 13 and verse 21. We read things like what we are told that Jesus experienced at the tomb of his friend Lazarus, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come with her also weeping. He was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled, as he was looking ahead towards the cross. Now is my soul troubled. Is my soul troubled? But as Jesus experienced that, and as the disciples are hearing these words from the Master, let not your hearts be troubled, they hear them from the one that he knew was the one who calmed the raging sea. As we read in Mark, for example, and he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. He was the one that not only had calmed the sea, but on another occasion had subdued the raging sea to make it a path on which to walk. In a couple of chapters later in the book of Mark, in chapter 6, we read, "For they all saw him and were terrified, who was walking on the water," on that water that had been a threat to the disciples. And eventually when he got into the boat, the wind ceased. They know. Now Jesus knew that the troubling experience, as I've said, would deepen as the cross came even nearer. And in a sense, things would deepen for the disciples too. Everything they have been working for is apparently collapsing. 3 years invested in the man and the message. This carpenter from Nazareth. 3 years invested in following him. And now everything will appear to collapse. Their sacrifices, having left things behind, will seem to be in vain. And now it is from deep love, from deep concern, that Jesus speaks these words to the disciples. Now, note that Jesus at no point asks them, "Why are you troubled?" That would be, in a sense, a very silly question. There are very good reasons for them to be troubled. There are very good reasons for their hearts being filled with a great apprehension. Now, he could have reminded them of their experience with him, or the things that they have witnessed. Actually, later on he will, but for a different purpose. But he doesn't, because he knows that there are very good reasons for the disciples to be experiencing what they are experiencing at this point. There are very good reasons for the disciples to be troubled, as he knew that there are very good reasons in our lives so often for our hearts to be troubled. Now, what are the bases for the words of Jesus? Why is it that he speaks the way that he speaks? It's not that he is exhorting the disciples to be sort of without being affected by the circumstances around them, or that he's saying something like, "Well, tough it up, just be a man and get on with it no matter what." No. Jesus points at what he does and at who he is. He tells them, "Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." You see, he points to them at the knowledge they have of who Jesus is. You believe in God, believe also in me. Continue to trust in me. You have trusted so far. The circumstances may have changed. The circumstances may change even further. But I don't. Believe in me. That's an imperative. Keep on believing in me. Keep on trusting me. Keep on fixing your eyes in me. You have believed that I am the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now, the circumstances around may seem to indicate that this is not the case, but you know. So keep on believing in me the way that you have done so far. But he also points to them at what he does for them. And so they have this knowledge of what Jesus does. I am going to be working for you, basically he says. I am going to prepare a place for you. Now, this verse 2, is not easy to interpret in detail. There are different opinions. I've even read one that thinks that in the Gospels, Jesus always refers to the Father's house when he speaks about the temple, and that he may be referring to the fact that in the church of God there are many places. The temple, who is we understand the real temple, who is the church of God. There are many places, there are places for many. So it's not easy. It's not absolutely easy to point to what did exactly Jesus mean with these words. There are many rooms, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. Maybe the simplest way is just take it like this. There's place for you, there's place for many, but that's not what is relevant. What would be relevant if Jesus would have just said, in my Father's house there are many rooms? So, yeah, great, there are many rooms. No, but I'm going to prepare a place for you. You see, I'm going to be working for you. This is what he has done all the time. He came to seek and to save that which was lost. He's been with them, leading them, teaching them. He's been with them even on some occasions, saving them from certain death, like when in the storm, in the midst of the storm. But he tells them, whatever the circumstances may appear now, from now on, I will invest allow me to say, my existence in doing that which you need. He's telling them, and he's telling us, I am concerned with you. And not only this, but I'm going to make sure that I preserve you to the very end. What would be the point of preparing the room if there would have been the possibility of those for whom the room was being prepared would never make it there? No, he tells them, I will take you to myself. Verse 3. I will. You see, this is not a question of, when I come back, I'll start looking for you, see if you're still around. No, I will take you to myself. He is guarding them, and he will be guarding them, and he's guarding us for that occasion when he comes back at the end. And the arguments that he gives for that are very simple. You see, I will take you to myself, verse 6, at the beginning of verse 6, because I am the way and the truth and the life. You see, this is one of the great I ams sayings in the Gospel of John, and there is so much that we can learn from these words, but basically what Jesus is telling them and telling us, that when confronted with the different attitudes towards life, and there are many, there is a truth to guide us. I am the truth. And because he is the truth, because he is the way, he is the truth, when confronted with many different opinions, he teaches us the way, he guides us in the way, he is the way and has opened the way for us. When confronted with different alternatives, we know that there is one that doesn't change. He is the way. When confronted with many different ways of understanding life and what life is all about and what life should be like, there is a truth, not a changing one, but there is the truth. As somebody wrote, the connection with Jesus is essential to the idea of truth, as we see it in this gospel. It starts from the essential nature of God. It finds its expression in the gospel, whereby God saves men, and it issues in lives founded on truth and showing forth truth. Jesus is the embodiment of truth. And when questioned to the meaning of man's existence, there is an answer of fullness of life in Jesus. He said there is purpose, there is a way, there is truth, there is life. And so Jesus speaks to them these words of great, great comfort, words that lead them to courage, words that lead us to courage. There may come times in our lives, there may be a situation in our lives when everything may seem a mess, and when things in our minds sometimes we think they could not get any worse. Well, Probably that's not true. I mean, they could get much worse. But there may be times in our lives when we think like this, but then these words come back to us. Believe in God, believe in me, remember who I am. Remember what I've done for you, remember what I'm doing for you, and remember what I will do for you. I will come back for you, that you may be what I am. In that presence of God, in that new existence, where sin is no more, where tears are no more, I will come back and take you, that you may be with me. Words that lead to courage. Then there are words that affirm our knowledge. Words that affirm our knowledge. They affirm the assurance that they have of belonging to the Father, and the assurance that they have of knowing the Father. This is this clear word from Jesus in the second part of verse 6. No one comes to the Father except through me. You are coming through me. And so you can be assured of belonging to the Father. And you can be assured of knowing the Father. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. And then it comes this little conversation with Philip. Philip is not fully getting it yet. As neither are the rest. I mean, they are growing in their understanding of who Jesus is. But basically, what Jesus tells Philip and tells the rest is, if you have seen me, you have seen God. If you have seen me, you have seen God. Now, we should not miss the significance of what Jesus is saying here. Throughout the Old Testament, in many ways, God is the hidden God, the God who cannot be seen, the God who is beyond our gaze. Even the God who, as I've mentioned on several occasions, has to cover Moses so to protect him from seeing him. But now Jesus is telling the disciples, telling us, if you have seen me, and seeing is not here a reference to the ability of visually seeing the body of Jesus. But Jesus is pointing at their perception. If you perceive who I am, you know God. That is solved. You see, this longing that there is in man's heart for knowing God, for seeing God. You have seen me, and you have seen the Father. Now, if there's any doubt, he tells them about this. Look at the works that I have done. Look at the works themselves. Works of omnipotence. Works of omniscience. Look at the works themselves. Could there be any doubt? Verse 11, believe me that I am in the Father, and that the Father is in me, or else believe on account of the works themselves. To the raging sea, peace be still. To the waters made a highway for him. To the blind men giving back their sight. To the dead giving life. Believe for the works. And we have the testimony of these works in his word. And he's telling us, as he told them, you see, in the face of reasonable fear, in the face of circumstances when fear may grab you, first of all, here are words of Jesus that give us courage. And here are words of Jesus that affirm our knowledge. You know who I am. You have seen God. You have seen God. And then there are words to the disciples that confirm their duty and confirm our duty. Really, in verses 12 to 14, Jesus says words that we need to understand properly, but at the same time, we need to allow them to impact us properly. You see, first of all, because of their knowledge of the Father, and because they know that no one can do the works that Jesus does, as Nicodemus said, if God was not with him, because you know me, you know the Father. Now, because of these things, there is a commission that comes to Christ, from Christ, to the disciples. A commission that comes by way of affirmation. In verse 12, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do. And if this is not enough, then he compounds the problem by saying, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father. You see, he affirms that the disciples will do greater works than he does. Well, first of all, by saying this, of course, he is giving the disciples, he's giving us a commission. There is a work for you to do. There is a work for you to do. And this work is actually going to be greater than the work that I've done. Now, how can we understand this? Is Jesus saying that the disciples will go on calming the storm? Well, Paul was a disciple and he was shipwrecked more than once, he tells us. Does he mean that he would go on walking on water? That they would go on feeding the multitudes miraculously? Or raising the dead? Is this to what Jesus is referring? The miracles that he did? Now, the Apostle John himself in this Gospel reminds us that the miracles that Jesus did were not an end in themselves. They had one purpose. And we may even say that one purpose only. At the end of chapter 20 we read, now Jesus did many other things in the presence of the disciples which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. There was a relatively short time at the beginning of the apostolic era when miracles confirmed the authority of the message that the apostles proclaimed, as the miracles that Jesus did confirmed the authority not only of the message but of the person that was giving this message. And the fact is that it is the message and what the message brought that mattered, that is truly the work of Jesus. She will bear a son and you shall call his name Jesus. Why? Because he will do many miracles? No, for he will save his people from their sins. For the Son of Man came, what? To do miracles? No, to seek and to save the lost. Even Jesus clarified what was really important. You may remember when he sent others to go about to preach the gospel and even to do signs in his name. They come back to him rejoicing that even demons, they said, are subject to us in your name. And he basically tells them, this is not what really matters. This is not what is really of the greatest importance. Rejoice that your names are written in heaven. This is what matters. That people are saved. And in this sense, the evidence is there, isn't it? We could add, even in our own heads, without too much trouble, the numbers that followed Jesus while he was alive, even after his resurrection. And we would have to say, not so many. But come the ascension and the day of Pentecost, Oh, and things change radically. We read of thousands on the day of Pentecost, don't we? And we read of thousands more in the days and the weeks and the months that followed. And we speak of billions today. So this great work of communicating the gospel and bringing people to the knowledge of the truth. Oh, what a blessing it is. The millions that today believe, the billions that today believe, and the billions that will go on believing in the years to come. And that is what's there in the prayer, that you see, whatever in my name that's connected with the works of Jesus. Again, Jesus is not speaking about Marcus making the prayer, Lord, give me the Ferrari, in Jesus' name, amen. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's not referring to a little formula that we can append to a prayer, and then because we've said the formula, he is under the obligation of giving us what we ask. No, he is referring to prayers made in accordance to who he is and the purposes that he has. This is what it means in the name. His authority, who he is, the purposes he has. And he tells us, when your prayer is, give us to be instruments in your hands. Give us to be instruments to go on doing these, your works, and even greater ones. At his own time, according to his will, and in the way that he wants, because after all it is his authority, he will do so. And so in the face of reasonable fear, these are words that confirm our duty. Once again, Jesus was not denying the reasons for the disciples to be filled with fear, as he's not denying the fact that more often than certainly we would like, our hearts are filled with fear. Our souls are troubled. But as fear comes their way, and it will keep coming, and as fear comes our way, Jesus wants to remind us that this is not the end of the road, and that there are very good reasons for facing it with confidence. Fear is not faced just with raw courage, or a strong personality, or the absence of the source of fear. Fear is faced with a certain knowledge. The knowledge of who Christ is and what he does for us. And this gives us strength. The knowledge of the certainty of knowing God in Christ. We have known God. What could be of a greater relevance? And the knowledge of the duty that we have the privilege to fulfill. Greater works. Is there anything greater than that? There isn't. Let us pray.